So we're going to look at comparing some fractions to each other, and really we're comparing which number is bigger. So if we have a sense of how big some fractions are, it really does help us when we do some comparisons here. So this one's particularly hard because 5/8 and 7/12 actually really are kind of close to each other. So it's kind of hard to say which one's bigger. But what we could do is we could kind of see how big they are with a common denominator, and that kind of does help. Okay, so we can kind of start kind of working this out. So if I take a look at 8 and 12, the common denominator is going to be, it looks like 23. So what does it look like with a common denominator? So I'm going to times 3 times by 3 here. I'm going to times by 2 times by 2 here. Okay, and when we work this out, we end up with 15 1/24 pieces, and here we have 14 1/24 pieces. So it looks like, yeah, it looks like the 5/8 is just a little bit bigger. Not much, but a little bit bigger. Okay, so when we're comparing fractions that are fairly close to each other, we do want to have some strategies to do this. So one thing we could do, I mean, these are numbers, so we can just work out the number as a decimal and put it on the number line. Okay, when we don't have that option, we should look at as a common denominator. So if I have 5/8, okay, 5/8 is probably right around here, 5/8, and 7/12 was just slightly below it. Okay, and so it's really hard to tell visually, as decimals, even they're pretty close decimals, but once we have the decimal, we can actually just compare the number values. So what we're doing is we're comparing the numbers, but we can do them very easily, and a good comparison if we have a common denominator. Okay, so there's this number line visual which we'll do together, but this number line visual lets you kind of see where exactly these fractions are on the number line. It gives us a better idea of how to compare them. Okay, so just looking at these, again, if you have a sense of these, it gives you a much better idea of how to do the comparison. So here we have 3 1/4 pieces and 5 1/8 pieces. So try to visualize what does 3 1/4 pieces look like and what does 5 1/8 pieces look like. Okay, so this is quite a bit bigger than 1/2. This is just a little bit bigger than 1/2. So really this should be bigger than that. Okay. Now if we have a common denominator comparison, okay, we can do this as a picture first. Okay, so there's my 3/4. This one here is my 5/8. Okay, so 5/8 would be shading in these pieces. So this is going to be definitely bigger that way. But again, if we want a more concise way of doing it, we really should have a common denominator. Okay, so I'm going to times by 2 and times by 2. So I end up with 6/8. Yeah, that's going to be bigger than the 5/8 that I have here. Okay. For B, really this one should be fairly obvious which one's bigger. 4/5, 4 to 5 pieces, and 3 out of 5, 15 pieces. Wow, this is way bigger. Okay, and we can actually show this being much bigger we can actually divide by 3 here. We can actually get a common denominator by division. Okay, now I can multiply the left-hand side, but I'm going to divide by 3 because I can do it either way. I can either times or divide. So I end up with, in this case, 1/5. And definitely 1/5 is smaller than the 4/5 over here. Okay, and again, as a number, we should have a sense that this number is quite a bit bigger than this. So this is like 80%, this is 20%. This one's a little bit harder because we have 3/4 and 5/7. So again, this one we probably should use a common denominator because it's going to be a little bit harder to see. Okay, so here's my 3/4 fraction. 5/7 is really hard to draw. I'm going to give it a shot. Okay, so there's 5/7 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's kind of hard to see, but If we were to guess, it looks like 3/4 is just a little bit bigger. Okay, but we can't be, it's hard to tell. We should use a common denominator. So in this case, the common denominator is going to be 28. Okay, so I'm going to use a multiplier of 7 here, 7 here, multiplier 4 here, 4 here, and then we end up with 21 over 28, and we're going to compare that to 20 over 28. And yeah, 21 is slightly bigger, right? And I didn't draw this that accurately, but it was accurate enough to kind of see that 3/4 was slightly bigger. But again, it is much more convincing and much more concise if we can put it in the common denominator. Okay, so this one here, 2/3 and 5/8. Okay, if you understand, if you know thirds and eighths, it's good to know your 1/8 fractions. But many of us don't. But if we do, we could probably say that, oh, okay, well, this one here is just slightly bigger. Okay, but again, we could always just get a common denominator. So times by 8, times by 8, times by 3, times by 3. And we can see that we have 16 over 24, and that is going to be slightly bigger than 15 over 24. Okay, for this one here, so this one we can make some other arguments here. So this one, if I double and double, I get 2/12, and here I get 2/13. 12ths are bigger pieces than 13ths, so we should really have that's going to be bigger. Okay, and again, this is, we're kind of doing a little bit of estimation here, but understand the reasoning. 2/12 is same number of pieces, but these are 13ths, and if I put this as 2/12 like this, the 12ths are bigger, and I have two bigger pieces, it should be bigger. In fact, it is. So when I do a common denominator here, so I'm going to times 13 times 13 times 6 times 6, here I get 13 over whatever that is. That's going to be 108, I think it is. That's going to be bigger than the 12 over 108 that I get here. Okay, and some of you may even be noticing that there's a shortcut. Okay, so if you know what the shortcut is, you can use a shortcut. So this one here is a little bit hard to say, but this is going to be my reasoning. These are 1/5 pieces. These are 1/6 pieces. These are smaller. If you think of a full circle missing one piece, one slice that's smaller, and a full circle missing one slice that's bigger, well, this side's going to be bigger. Okay, so that's going to be my reasoning to say this is true. Again, we could always just test this using a common denominator. Times 6 times 6 times 5 times 5, and I get 24 out of 30, which is less than 25 out of 30. So this one here is going to be, let's get a common denominator of 110. So I'm going to times this by 11, times this by 11. So I'm going to get 100 over 110 is bigger than 99 over 110. So this is not easy if you were to actually put them on a number line. They're very close on a number line. But there is a shortcut. So if you know what the shortcut is, you might want to apply that. Okay? So there's a quick way actually that we can compare these two fractions without doing the whole steps.